Okay, so just answering a question that I've received about human design, whether it's a philosophy or is it like a guide to spirituality. And, first of all, fundamentally, I've always looked at human design. It covers the entire spiritual field and the mechanics of how that works, definitely. But it is primarily a set or a system of mechanics. It's a science of the workings of reality, of the universe, of existence, how everything came to be. This is a core part of human design that is quite often totally overlooked. Most people are oblivious because they're only looking at the surface of human design, which is where you see your body graph chart and everything. You learn about your type, which is all so important. But how is that body graph, that chart generated? Well, it's all based on the mechanics of existence itself. Another name for human design is the mechanics of the Maya. What is the Maya? It's a Hindu Sanskrit word. Maya means, essentially the best translation would be illusion. It also means to measure. So Maya, measure. As soon as we start to measure things, we start to create illusions, i.e. as soon as the mind gets involved with the infinite what's the word here? As soon as the mind gets involved with the infinitely variable nature of reality, and starts to measure things. As soon as we take something infinite and start to make it finite, which is what we do with the mind, is when we start to create illusion. We start to create reality, because underneath reality is this infinite substrate of infinite space that is this quantum field that contains all potentials, contains all realities as potential, and infinite variations of reality are possible, yet we seem to be living in empty space, in this projection of reality that has a sense of stability to it, that's reliable, that shows up every day. We have these particles that make up our bodies and that make up our material existence, yet we know fundamentally that underneath the particles, they're waves, and they are just choosing to show up as these particles consistently to make it seem like matter, stable matter, but we know that it's actually 99.9999% empty space, and we know that in that space are all possible infinite variations of frequency that could have manifested in another way, yet we have this consistency, right? What are we to do with all that? What human design shows is how this consistency, this continuation of our existence is upheld, how it's held in place. And that is, has a lot to do with, this is where the astrology aspect comes into it, the calculations. We see that we're living in this solar cell, this solar system, and the way that the planets are moving around, the neutrino information that is coming from our sun and from distant stars, carrying information through empty space, passes through our planetary system, and this neutrino information, this quantum dark matter that is streaming from these different star systems, from our own sun, passing through the planets, and is essentially programming us and programming life. And this is what we call the transit field. This is the program that astrologists refer to in human design. We use it as well. It's this solar program that is running in the background that kind of is controlling evolution and taking us through this evolutionary process of this kind of greater organizational scheme kind of thing. Anyway, this gets really involved. I won't go too deep into that. essentially human design shows us the mechanics of how this reality came to be, how it came into form, and why everything is the way that it is, why you are the way you are, like why do you have your own particular uniqueness. And because we are all so beautifully individual and unique, and that's what your body graph is showing down to the finest degree, your differentiation. Now, another name for human design, there's been multiple names that Ra kind of gave it. He likes to label things, it's part of his circuitry, was the science of differentiation, right? It's the science of the differentiation of you and the universe, all the different things, how all the different things came to be, how uniqueness unfolds, how reality continually differentiates itself. If you look at your body graph, especially if you look at the mandala wheel around the body graph, if you have that capability to see that in your software or however you're generating your body graph, you see the 64 hexagrams, the 64 I Ching gates around the body graph that show you how the neutrino information passes through the planets at the moment of your birth, and how that creates the snapshot that essentially imprints your mind and body, one at birth, one at a different time. And the 64 gates, which the planets will basically fall in, that we generate the calculations from, are basically representative of the human genome. It's your genetics, you know. It's the 64 genetic codon sequence that we all have access to, right? Each person has the entire human genome within them, yet only some of those only some of that genetic information is emphasized or embossed or defined, as we say. And so you can take the human genetic the human genome and overlay it, and it will perfectly match up with the I Ching hexagrams, and that's kind of how we look at it. So what I'm trying to say is, another way to look at that body graph is it's a snapshot of, or an illustration of, your genetic potential and genetic traits. And you can see how we are all imprinted differently, and it's that different imprinting that is what creates the uniqueness of you. And so you can see how scientific it is, but it covers the spiritual as well, because it basically shows how the entire existence works, how everything came to be. It also shows, you know, how we as humans relate to the Godhead, relate to the higher gods and spiritual reality and different beings and all that kind of stuff. Like, this is a huge topic. Would love to go into with people. If you're interested, please let me know. We can do a course on it. We can do one-on-one sessions with it to go deeper into this. But like, our relationship with different godheads and different you know, avatars in history and different higher beings and all of that, what we're seeing there is our relationship with the gods, essentially, and with the higher spiritual dimensions and all of that. We're seeing our interaction of our uniquely individual personality crystal, we call it in human design. Basically, it represents your fragment of spirit, of mind, that comes from the original source, you know, before the Big Bang exploded, when everything was just shrunk down into a tiny particle. And before that exploded, we're seeing your individual personality crystal, your mind, part of you, that is one tiny, like one specific shard or piece of the original totality, the original crystal that has individuated. We see that comes from a greater portion of that original mind, right? And it's those greater kind of chunks of mind or personality crystal that if you take the entire original mind of the universe, personality crystal of the universe, and you divide it into 16 pieces or 16 segments, then you get these 16 fundamental aspects of the Godhead that come under different quarters of that mandala wheel. We see, the elements in there. We see different quarters or faces of the original mind or Godhead, whatever you want to call it, that we are these kind of smaller differentiated aspects of. And this gets really complex, but what we get with that is that's where religions come from. This is where the original mysteries come from. God worship, interaction with the other side, interaction with different spiritual beings. It's our ability to communicate with these greater Godheads. But the whole point is we are, we're here to be our differentiated aspects, a differentiated self. And so what human design does is it shows you that. It shows you how you have come to be you, right? It shows you your literal pathway from the beginning. You were present at the beginning. It shows you that whole linear pathway since then, that not even linear, that fractal pathway. There's a fractal line that leads to where you are now as you, how you came to be, and the uniqueness of that. And you can see in the body graph as well, there's different kinds of circuitries. We have collective circuitry in the body graph, we have tribal circuitry, we have individual circuitry, and these represent different kind of energetic purposes in our DNA, in our genetics, that is literally mapped out in the body graph. You can see the human need and path of searching for the higher, for God, for consciousness, whatever it is, for awakening. You can see there's literally a path that shows that. You can see you can literally map out the drive to awaken, why some of us have it, some of us don't. It's all there. It's all there in our genetics. Human design really shows us our genetics. It shows us our energetic blueprint. It shows us our uniqueness. It really is. It's not a belief system, because you don't have to believe in anything. It's using calculations of our reality, of the placement, the geometrical placement of the planetary bodies in our solar system. It's using those calculations and generating a map that you can play with and experiment with and see if it's true or not for you, and then once you see the logic of it, and it's not, human design isn't just logical, it's very logical and mechanical, but it also includes and maps out the abstract, the unconscious, the non-logical. It shows you how that works. On one side of the body graph we have the logical circuitry that goes through the spleen, the splenic awareness, which is this deeply primal, logical, reasoned out circuitry. And then on the other side we have the solar plexus. We have the emotional abstract side, where it's more about the experiential nature of the human experience and of the evolutionary process. We have to have both sides. We have leftness and rightness. So it's all there, but it is a system itself that has logic that, if you can experiment with and see if it works for you, makes you want to investigate deeper, investigate further as to why that is the case. And that's where it gets really interesting. So it's an ongoing experiment. You don't have to believe in anything. The original creator, Ra Uru Hu, all like constantly said, don't believe me, don't believe a word I'm saying, test this out for yourself, see if it works. If it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does work, you know, that raises more questions for you to go and investigate. And that's where it all begins. You know, for me, it began with a place in my life where I was really, really suffering from a lot of like the pain of indecision. How do I make decisions? And really struggling with that, and really wanting to work on that. And you know, human design kind of popped up in a way where it suggested that I start to trust my gut and start to trust my immediate initial energetic response, or like gut feeling about things, rather, you know, and be spontaneous and trust that truth in the now, rather than then going up into my mind and letting time pass and letting thoughts come into it. And that's when I start to move away from that original initial truth. And so I started experimenting with that, and it's totally changed my life ever since, like drastically following that. So it's given me something to rely on that's intrinsic to me. It's true for me, and that is what has led me to be so curious about how this works. So yeah, I'll leave that at that because I can go on for ages. Any questions about anything that I've said, please ask, and I'll make more and more videos about more and more questions.